Hey, everybody. Welcome. Hunt Club Podcast, Cyber Minds episode. If you've tuned in before, you know me, you see my face. It's Woj, Mark Wojtasiak, VP of Product Marketing here at Vectra. I love bringing guests on, hence the episode or show Cyber Minds, because to have different perspectives on things. And I've brought Chris onto the show, Chris O'Donnell. Chris, introduce yourself to everyone so they know who you are, what you're about, because I'm going to pick your brain and we're going to have some fun on this topic.
Hey, sure. So yeah, thanks for reaching again. I'm Chris O'Donnell. So I run a bit of a blog around seeking excellence in cyber engineering. I've been in kind of cyber engineering for about the past 8 years-ish now. I'm mainly focused on kind of building those capabilities with new technologies coming in, and also transforming kind of SOC capabilities, which I think we might be talking about today.
Yeah. So you gave a talk at the Hunt Club conference, and you also wrote a blog about this. That one thing you said in your blog, I'm going to quote you. The traditional view of a security operations center as a centralized team handling every aspect of an incident is outdated. And I'm like, okay. Chris goes into a little bit about that, but now I'm like, okay, outdated is a strong word, but let's talk about that. Like, what made you come to this conclusion or this thought? And then like what's like the security engineering view of why it's outdated?
Sure. So yeah, pretty bold, outlandish statement. Obviously, needs behind it. So what I've seen since being in industry, and I think this is kind of what a lot of many kind of leaders and engineering managers and SOC teams have seen as well, is that there's a massive shift from kind of static typologies of technology which support organizations which have kind of been kind of monolithic for many years, to something now where the attack surface is a lot broader. We hopefully and always aspire to move at a faster pace in terms of productizing and delivering capabilities for our customers, whether that's internal or external. And the traditional ways of working, which I think we kind of set out with kind of the NOC and SOC operations many years ago, have to transform at that same pace, right? So I think if we took the same model, which is we kind of been incubated 10 years ago, we're arguably looking for unicorns. And what I mean by that is analysts who can operate coming from a kind of tier 1 to tier 3, who know the in-depth detail of certain processes within a certain team within that organization.
Yeah.
And I think they just don't exist anymore. I think one, they come probably at a heavy price. 2, there's a lot of training, and 3, would they actually ever be satisfied themselves as kind of an actual single point persona? So the idea is that we decentralize the responsibility and argue part of the capability of a SOC, and we focus it more on a team sport. What the analogy I kind of use is a bit of a rugby one. I'm a bit of a big rugby fan, and what I'm trying to call out is your fly half is not singly going to win the Six Nations or win the cup. It is a team sport, so you still need to have other players on the pitch who can kind of support you and resolve it, and obviously beat the opponent. Obviously, the game which we're playing is making sure that those opponents don't actually hack into our systems and exfil our data, etc.
Yeah.
So what I was calling out was that actually, as a analyst now, potentially, the model which we're starting to incubate is one of they liaise with DevOps teams which know their stack end to end. They know their algorithms, they understand the code, and they can liaise with them. So it goes from being a unicorn of being able to respond and resolve and contain, to actually leveraging and more kind of coordinating and facilitating capability to resolve incidents, which I think is a bit of a different mindset shift.
You've put this into play in your organizations?
We've started incubating the idea of it, which is awesome, and also like we're calling out on leveraging kind of third-party capabilities as well. So whether that's kind of AWS certs, that they know their cloud infrastructure like nobody else, right? So it makes sense to partner and build this out. And I think we're seeing general shifts in the industry. The conversations which I'm having with different organizations highlights the need for a rapid shift in order to deliver against objectives from the board. And this is kind of a model which kind of supports that. Doesn't necessarily come at a cheaper cost, but does come at a clear accountability and kind of rapid response agility.
Yeah, and I think that we hear a lot about just operational efficiency gains and different approaches. And obviously there's a lot of technology that's supposed to improve operational efficiency, and then sometimes it gets, it's easier said than done. So understanding, like, talk to me about like a little bit of like, it's not necessary. You just said it's not necessarily at a cheaper cost, but the gain in operational efficiency, the ability to detect, investigate, respond at a higher pace with more effective use of talent, kind of a division of talent and expertise across a team and role. Talk to me a little bit about that and how that kind of manifests.
I mean, I think the worst thing to happen during an incident is that you kind of get a bit like a sunk cost fallacy type mindset or rabbit hole, and kind of keep going down a certain path, thinking like this is the right route to go because limited expertise within a certain element of the stack, etc., etc. And just because it looks like unusual behaviour doesn't necessarily mean it's contributing to that incident. And that's kind of the optimization and efficiency, which I suppose this model kind of really leans itself towards. That you're actually focusing on people who understand it. So that dev team, if they see that Exchange server or domain server acting in a certain way, they understand why it acts in that fashion. Whereas if you're extrapolated down, you don't understand the contextual understanding of how the architecture works or is integrated, then naturally you can start to go down a rabbit hole quite quickly and waste time. So I think that's where we really lean to. I think the other thing to call out is outdated, and also we've all been riding a bit of a myth potentially around the single pane of glass. Right, it's a desirable piece. I get, it's thrilling, it's alluring, and every SOC which you go to, I'm sure the heat map of the world and all little lights flash everywhere. But I think what this framework leverages is actually that the right people look at the right pane of glass. So there's not a kind of centralized view, but actually there's responsibilities here and there, and the coordination of that is accurate. And different dashboarding can leverage different depths, right? So the one which an analyst might see is based on a detection rule, detection engineering beta kind of delivered out of the seam, which is awesome, but actually at a lower level, that dev team might be focusing purely on that stack and understanding, well, an IDAM or an IAM alert has triggered specifically for that application, and that's exactly the combination and correlation of alerting and depth, which I think we desire, rather than trying to say, let's all join the utopia vision of the big nice fancy dashboard.
Yeah, exactly. It's like hey, let's shift the focus to the what and the why and less on the how. And you talked when we first sat down and talked, because we had met at Hunt Club, and then we sat down and talked and said, hey, let's brainstorm some ideas. I found your blogs really interesting. We went down this path of like high performance teams, right? And you have a lot of passion around building high performance teams. I'm looking at my notes, and you had talked about, and I think this may have been like an episode that we were talking about earlier, but the conversation's going this way, which is, I think, is great. This notion of like captains and swarms, and talk a little bit about that, because it sounds like, I mean, to me, what you're describing is, security operations center pipe dream of like the whole center thing implies one utopia of single pane of glass, everything's there. But what you're arguing is like, everyone, like take rugby or any sport for that matter, anything worthwhile, anything in terms of like efficacy, efficiency is going to take a well architected and balanced team of people. And share with the audience kind of your perspective on building these high performance teams, or talk a little bit more about that and its role in
Yeah,
kind of the decentralized view.
yeah, you've actually hit the nail. We can all have an objective, but actually, what underpins that is the culture. People have been researching culture for years and PhDs on it and everything like that. But essentially, what we've done and what we started to pioneer are certain tactics, and we've leveraged these from the likes of Netflix and fintech startups and things like that, because we're trying to bring that kind of new, fresh, energized approach to how do we actually do this team sport, how do we actually engage
Mm-hmm.
to work together. So you know quite rightly called out there about informed captains is a wicked tactic which we've kind of started to leverage, where actually when we've got an incident or problem, whether it's relating to engineering or security, you have one informed person, one informed engineer who kind of leads on that and then draws in relevant expertise. Immediately we're getting rid of who's actually got the pen on this, who's leading with it, etc., and also which then what that kind of becomes kind of quite compliant and complements is actually the swarming idea. So
Mm-hmm.
we've learned from the past around, okay, we've got an issue, let's draw in 20 people, we've all got mixed views, lack of clarity, and actually we don't really get anywhere particularly quickly. So what we do is use this tactic called swarming. We get, I think, a maximum of 5 people into the room, and they're hand-picked around, okay, you've got domain knowledge in this area, you've got domain knowledge in that area, and this is how we're going to kind of support. And basically what we're trying to do during that swarm, and they're time capped to 30 minutes, is say, right, how do we progress forward? At the time, we don't know if that's the right path forward, but we're moving forward. So
Yeah.
we can start to eliminate, potential red herrings and things like that, and then we might come back and go, right, okay, we've gone on this path, but still not correct. Maybe we need to explore this direction. But I think effectively what we're trying to always say is, we're moving forward, trying to remediate. And there's just a couple of our tactics. So obviously, informed captain leads to swarm. Another one which we do is actually, we tried to, hygiene of detection technology is really obviously crystal important. Not only is the attack surface changing, especially cloud, obviously that's why we talk about a devolved SOC model to support us across all of that. But what we're actually saying is, we're spinning up applications as a service, and etc. Every hour through automation. But effectively, what we're then calling out is that actually we can try and predict where we think we're going to go wrong in the future. So the idea of a pre-mortem is actually, we look ahead to say, okay, we think we might hit an issue here because this architect isn't going to be there, or this person's not going to be there. And then that they can kind of be identified, to make sure we've got the right rigor and support in. But also we call out, okay, there's some improvements to technology which is going down track, and we might need to pivot our approach in our roadmap and engineering. And these, like I said, it all feeds back to the culture and how we operate as a team, and how we know how to engage each other without kind of a fragmented approach. And obviously all of that is then underpinned by our natural ways of working around agile and delivery and things like that. But I think the tactics are really the nuance to how we can all weave this together. There's about 10 in total, which we use, and also we look at new ones as well. Do we think we've got this quite right? And it's not about kind of like to the audience, it's not about going, okay, Chris has got 10 tactics and they work really well, why don't they work for us? It's actually one, you could arguably take one of those tactics and it works really well. The other 9 doesn't fit your organization, doesn't, or you're not there yet, and that's completely cool, right? We've just found our own pattern, our own ways of working, our own kind of funky style, and it works for our wider organizational fit and culture, as well as our kind of lower end team culture.
Yeah, I think that you're bleeding into a conversation, another episode that we've got to have, because this is this seems to be another one of those utopia things, but it's I wouldn't say it's utopia. I think it's a must-have, and when you frame it as pre-mortem and post-mortem, in my mind, I'm like, okay, how does the security, as decentralized security operations, shift the mindset from reactive to proactive, or at least balance the work between reacting to an incident that may happen, or a reactive defense, or a proactive. You could call it offense versus defense, you can call it a bunch of different things, but like, There's a lot of talk in the world of Gartner and other analyst firms around preemptive security, like how do we shift that? And we're not talking necessarily tried and true prevention, but just a proactive approach to defense, and to operations for that matter. And even to your point, to security engineering and kind of anticipating things that might happen,
Yeah,
and getting ahead of those based on the evidence you have. And you're right, the people with the domain expertise are the only ones, if you can bring domain expertise to this group, to this team, you're all going to have different perspectives of or different levels of knowledge relative to um, you know, uh, kind of what it would take to shift that mindset to proactive.
yeah, most certainly. And I think that is a a desirable place to be. But I think also it's the rigor. How do you have the right workflows within an engineering team and the right integrations to then respond to something which you
Yeah,
potentially miss, right?
yeah,
So everybody can talk at length for the ideal situation of being proactive, and I'm an absolute advocate of that as well. And looking at hygiene, but also then in that moment of madness. So we've got a decentralized SOC capability. That's awesome. We tick that box. We've got SMEs who really know their stuff. But then actually, if we identify, okay, we've got some detection logic which is wrong, or we need to put an automation in to improve our rapid response, which is brilliant. How do we actually do that, and do we have the agility to get it in quite rapidly, right? So
yeah,
one of the things which we've really focused on over the course of the past few years is actually automating our kind of detection enhancement capability. So as soon as you put a request into us, and this isn't an email, this is an automated process. So you put this detection in, you can predict as an analyst what you think the KQL or what you think the detection logic should be into that submission. We will then pick it up, and that's all kind of the agile ways of working, and then we'll flash it back to you during the kind of the CI/CD pipeline. And that'll go straight into our production environment for kind of detecting stuff. So it's actually okay. Have you got the rigor to respond and also integrate with your client base? So if this was a product, right, which you could look down the lens of it being a product, is go, okay, how do I keep my customers informed? We really know what they really want, and we want to get a rapid delivery model. So effectively, you actually then become much more of a service to the organization.
yeah,
You own your product. Arguably you could even run it as a P&L, to be quite honest, and say, right, how effective is the product, and is it driving the right value? Because your customers as an engineering division are the SOC, and you want to make sure they have they have the best products on market which they can go to, because naturally like you would with any product, if you're not getting the right usage out of your iPhone, you're going to go to Samsung, or you're going to go to Android, right?
yeah,
So you
yeah,
can actually
yeah,
put mindset.
yeah, exactly. It is, God, we could talk. uh, This episode could go like 2 hours if we wanted it to, because it would jump into another opinion I have, and I think I think that it's a opinion you have, as well, around the SOC has historically been like operationalizing tools and technology that the business purchases or needs in order to operate, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, this goes to like reactive versus proactive. I'm like, it's much more than that. What if the SOC was, to your point, providing a service to the lines of business, kind of rooted in, like in our world, it would be attack intelligence, right? Or risk intelligence, or whatever it might be. Again, that's a whole different topic. It's like, how do we get the SOC and go from the whole brand building of the SOC? What's the brand of the SOC inside of an organization? Security branding, and it almost becomes into my world around marketing. It's like, how do you market security inside an organization so people see it as a highly valuable source of intelligence and knowledge, and risk reduction and whatever it might be. So anyway, that's
I think that's super cool though, because you can also do like competitive mapping to it, right?
yeah,
Because your internal stock is your competitors in MSSP, arguably.
yeah,
So why the question is, why would we not outsource this? Is it providing enough value that we don't need to outsource the capability or something like that? And
yeah,
that's a very very interesting point. I just kind of looping back. I know we kind of weaved it through a few topics there. I think a really interesting conversation is, what are the best certifications for your
mm,
SOC or engineering team? right? And there's a big one in my mind where, have we kind of been taken on a journey that there's certain qualifications which certain security professionals need in order to operate effectively, when actually don't need to operate effectively anyway, and that's just a tick box exercise. And I think that's really interesting conversation to be had around, okay, what do we actually need to baseline a core capability? I recognize you need kind of experience and domain knowledge and things like that, but actually I really question, am I looking for someone who's got that certain qualification or certification, or am I looking for experience overall? Because I don't think the two go hand in hand. I think
no, and yeah, that, oh God, this is a great topic. This comes up quite a bit. It's funny how many cyber minds leaders I talk to on the podcast, talent always comes up. It's like,
yeah,
what is the makeup of a cybersecurity professional, across domain and expertise and specialty and whatever it might be? Like, what do you look for? And oh gosh, we could talk. That might be our next episode, Chris, in terms of like certifications versus character or characteristics. What's the characteristics? And I don't know. We're gonna keep going if we if we keep throwing ideas. I'm writing that one down because that's the next thing we're gonna sit down and talk about.
awesome.
But this was fantastic, Chris. Thanks again for coming on. I hope everybody. These are the types of kind of episodes that I love doing. Just no slideware, no nothing. We're just unrehearsed talking about topics. Chris is super, super interesting, super insightful. Appreciate you sharing kind of how you think about things here on Cyber Minds, and you're coming back, whether you like it or not. I'm gonna have you
Awesome.
on. We're gonna do a few of these together because I got to pick your brain more. Awesome.
Brilliant. Thanks,
Thanks,
Mark.
Chris. Thanks, everybody.